Next agenda items, the annual SCIP update input request, another information and discussion. Justin.
Today actually is a rather light, and we had intended to bring that last item before you as a voting item, but since there is a big change and we're looking to bring it to the PSCC, we felt it was important to put it out for public comment, get it before the PSCC as well for their comment before we had a vote here. So the next item though, and that's our 2012 SCIP revision. In your packet there is the list of our existing 2011 SCIP initiatives. We are in our process, our annual process of reviewing the SCIP. The couple of things with it. Today we're just going to go over kind of the background of our SCIP, where it came from, what we're trying to do. Then also say I want to kind of, the key vision of our SCIP is to the interconnection of regional shared systems. So I want to update everyone on the status of some of our larger systems and to get some discussion from this body on that, if that vision, key strategy of our SCIP still makes sense, your thoughts, and also go through the various initiatives and get your thoughts on those as well. So the SCIP originally was drafted in 2007 as part of a grant requirement. We submitted it to the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Emergency Communications, and it was approved by them. And then since 2009, we have been, 2009 or 2010, we have been revising the SCIP annually. The current version of the SCIP was approved last April. This version, we are looking to have it approved by during the July meeting. F5. The key thing with the SCIP, the key thing with our SCIP update this year is really looking at some of our key initiatives. Well, let me do it this way. The key thing we wanted to accomplish with this year's SCIP update and revision is to look at the key initiatives that we're working on in the short and medium term, and in particular further develop out the action plans for those initiatives. We also want to take a look at how the National Public Safety Broadband Network and its impact on Arizona, how our SCIP could be better strengthened to reflect the convergence long-term of voice and data and the new national federal initiative to build that network. Obviously, we're going to go through the entire SCIP, review it for accuracy, make sure it's all still relevant, that type of stuff. And we've been working on this process since February. The thrust of the input for our SCIP this year will come at our annual SCIP implementation workshop on May 22nd, and I've got further details down later in the presentation here on that. But the Office of Emergency Communications will be coming out to lead that SCIP workshop with, again, the focus on a few of the strategic initiatives that are most important to our strategy, how we can develop actionable plans on those, both from the broadband implementation and our system of systems approach. From broadband implementation, we've gone through and kind of looked at the 12 existing SCIP initiatives that we have. And there are 4 of these that we have identified that we think can be strengthened in some way to improve our relationship, to the National Broadband Network, and how, in particular, how it will be implemented in Arizona. One of the key things is, particularly that we heard the last SIEC meeting when the broadband legislation was introduced, as well as the PSCC meeting, is that we want to keep things following the existing structures that we already have. We don't want to be building new structures, and we want to kind of make sure that the broadband approach follows the LMR approach, particularly to improving interoperability. With Strategic Initiative 1, the Government's Model and Plan, Initiative 6, from the local perspective, functional regional systems supporting interoperable communications, and Initiative 9, upgrading operable communication systems for state agencies. For all three of those, really, the tweak that we're looking at is just emphasizing it's for voice and data. Obviously, communications covers everything, and interoperable communications covers both, but we want to make sure that it's there. And, we kind of like your thoughts on it. Does that make sense? Does this, are these the right initiatives to be thinking in those terms?
That would be inclusive. Does that answer what you've been seeing at the federal level?
I mean, we really haven't seen much in the way of integrating broadband into SCIPs. I mean, the work is starting, and we're starting at the same time that everybody else is, so that we haven't really seen any fully formed direction yet.
And when we first started out, but we did talk about interoperable voice and data. At that point, we just hadn't defined how we'd ever achieve data interoperability. Now that we've got a supposed national platform, proposed, then at that point,
They think
going back,
theorize
data interoperability is probably an appropriate activity of the.
I will say that nationally, the other SWIPs, when we talk about this, most of them have not updated their SCIP as we have. A lot of their SCIPs are out of date, and from the time that was mandated to do, they haven't been keeping with annual updates as the way we are. So our SCIP already talks about broadband more than most do. With possible exception of certain jurisdictions who've probably done separate broadband public safety plans who have statewide waiver recipients in the VTOP funding area. But from a pure SCIP, kind of angle, we're probably ahead of the game. There is quite a bit of language in our SCIP about data and also about broadband already. So we just want to beef it up further this year.
That's a reasonable tweak that be inclusive.
And I think it'll be helpful from I know every year when the IWG reviews grant applications, every time a data piece comes through the IWG, it typically, I don't want to say it's rejected, but the IWG has traditionally not addressed those because I don't think we target that in the SCIP. So I think by including it in the SCIP, it now kind of gives the IWG a little bit of purview to start looking at those applications, because those typically seem to fall off the grid because nobody really knows what do you do with the data application. And I think it falls in line with what we're trying to do with the SCIP, and that would kind of hopefully give some direction to the IWG to start making some of those tactical funding decisions. Because I think you're going to start seeing those as this framework gets finalized. People are going to hopefully start looking at grant opportunities to move forward with developing that out.
And IWG, for those who don't know, is the Interoperability Working Group of the Arizona Department of Homeland Security.
Well, Scott, this kind of goes back 8 or 9 years ago when our initiative slogan was pipes and pipes. And it really ties us together now in the formal.
And that actually was a good point that was brought up. There are 2 initiatives that we already have that deal with broadband that aren't up there. Are Initiatives 3, the implement a strategy for supporting national level goals at the regional, state, and local level. One of the objectives there is to promote compliance with evolving national public safety broadband standards and structures. And then Initiative 4, the establish a PSP policy standards and procedures framework. One of the objectives for that one is to develop a statewide public safety broadband integration and implementation strategy and related standards. And so, in fact, it's that initiative that Michael Britt has been working under for the last several months and trying to advance broadband. Our last initiative is our usage and outreach initiative, and we're proposing to specifically deal with broadband as one of our outreach topics, and Susan will address that in more detail in our outreach plan presentation later today. So that's where we're looking at from broadband implementation. The other area that we are looking at revisions for this year has to do with our strategy for pursuing a system of systems approach that leverages connections between state, local systems, particularly regional shared systems. The two initiatives that we're going to focus on in the afternoon session of the SCIP workshop is initiatives 2 and 6, the developing regional communications governance structures, and 6, implement, enhance, and promote functional regional systems in support of interop communications. Both of those have been the short, medium-term, kind of high-priority goals for the PSCC over the last several years. We have seen some progress in some areas, particularly over the last 2 years, TICPs. We've seen a lot more progress on TICPs, and within the next year to 2 years, right now there's a plan for almost every county to have a TICP, and shortly we'll make sure that every county is covered within the next year and a half. The functional regional systems, I'm going to go over the larger systems here in a moment, but we are seeing significant progress in some of the smaller areas. I shouldn't say significant. We are seeing progress in some of the rural communities through shared dispatch centers. Some communities are having discussions about whether it's shared channel plans. Tomorrow there'll be some discussions up in La Paz County about their future efforts. So we are having some discussion on that. But I think one of the things that we'd like to hear both from you today and then at the SCIP workshop is this still the right strategy? Are we making enough progress? Are we making the right progress? Is there a different direction that we should be heading on? Before we get to that, by kind of planting the seed in your heads for that, I just want to kind of go through the major systems that we have and where they are. All of this information is taken from the back of our SCIP, the updated portions of it. These don't all kind of classify as that sense of regional shared systems. We have a rather broad definition there. Pima County, this is their updated milestone, and I'm not going to read through all of these because I think you all are familiar with the systems. But right now they are doing some work on governance-related issues. You can see in particular the microwave installations began down there. Tower site construction is underway. 11 of the towers are finished, 8 are under construction, and that's out of the total of the 27. Right now, they're looking to be on target for the system to be completed in 2014 with the user cutover beginning shortly after that. That system at this point would represent 19 different fire agencies and 10 police and other emergency service agencies down there. And also, once that's brought on, you've heard about our regional systems connection, RCSC?
Regional System Connection. Sorry.
The
Regional Communications
Systems Connections, yes, sorry. Too many acronyms. The RCSC project will tie PC-WIN into the other systems for that rapid response channel. RWC has had tremendous progress since their 2000 system design. Some of the major projects that they're currently working on, 3 new major subsystems have been added recently. There are several new sites that have been added to expand the existing subsystems, to expand additional coverage. They have several other initiatives that are in the planning stages to make sure that the entire network is ready for the rebanding process when that comes up for the 800 megahertz folks down the road. So RWC continues to expand out here. In particular, from a systems communication governance type of perspective, RWC and TRWC are beginning the process of a shared strategic planning between both of their initiatives at a kind of a fairly high level there between executive directors, board members, et cetera, both of those groups. TRWC, the kind of same, somewhat similar concept to the RWC, slightly different business model here. They've been on since November 2008 was their first board of directors meeting. Moving forward, they are in the process of working with RWC to have that kind of shared long-term strategic vision while still maintaining the two separate business models and entities. The UMA system, we've had a bunch of conversations about YRCS over the last several years, both from Department of Public Safety and Department of Transportation at the state level, partnering with them with the new upgraded digital microwave loop in southern Arizona that allows DPS and ADOT to ride on their 700 megahertz system, utilizing the microwave and the YRCS master controller. The DPS folks and ADOT folks can talk back to the rest of their folks in their agency that are on their UHF, or I believe ADOT has some VHF systems as well. In fact, I know they do. There's as a result of that partnership, the DPS Joint Operations Task Force, ADOT purchasing some new multi-band radios. Those different agencies can interoperate with the local agencies that are a part of the YRCS system. In addition, the RICO project, which will be coming to a close here soon, that we've been working on for the last 2 years, has significantly expanded 700 megahertz digital coverage across the entire southwest border region by about 6,500 square miles. Obviously, with canyons and other such things, that's not necessarily 6,500 continuous square miles, but y'all understand coverage. There is one of the 6 sites that's still remaining to be installed. That is a road access issue, and we're probably going to need to be in the next month or so looking at whether or not that tower location needs to be changed or whether we should continue to wait for road access. Along with that RICO project, we will be deploying 10 radios to PSAPs in the southern region to establish a system-wide calling channel for the southeastern portion of the state, and that'll allow the state EOC and various PSAPs and sheriff stations in those 5 southern border counties to all talk it to each other for interoperability purposes and kind of give them that first connection to that broader 700 megahertz footprint down there in the south, something that they don't currently have. And then lastly is the state's Emergency Operations Center EOC network that ties the various county and state EOCs together, as well as the 6 communications vehicles. This is all part of the Arizona Public Service APS radio system that DEMA has partnered with to create this. A couple of major initiatives working with other states, and we'll hopefully get an update from ADEM on this in the future on their status, but working with the adjoining states to connect state EOCs in the southwestern region to help build that out. And then also they're looking at that 800 megahertz rebanding and developing the business case for upgrading that system. So that's kind of high level on where the major initiatives or major regional systems stand right now. As I said, there are a number of areas or counties that have looked at consolidated dispatch operations, counties that are having conversations with either joining existing regional systems or looking at building their own shared kind of regional systems. We're going to be getting updates from other communities here over the coming year on their progress towards advancing regional systems. But for the time being, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on where do you think we stand? Do you feel we're making the right amount of progress given the kind of current status of interoperability in Arizona, the other priorities, the current funding situations? Do you feel that we are still following the right strategy for trying to tie regional systems together given our kind of funding outlook, if you will, particularly now that we've seen Homeland Security grant funding cut in half nearly each of the last 2 years?
Yes, I would say I think the goal needs to remain to work those systems from an interoperable communication standpoint. I think the RCSC is a good example of what we've tried to accomplish with that, and I think that's been a successful approach for the state and for the office. The one thing, and you know, my good friend Randy and I have experienced for years, I don't know that I would focus too much on initially trying to tie those systems together. I think that's a longer-term evolution that's going to happen. I think there's still technology, Randy, help me if I'm wrong here, but there's still technology that needs to be developed to truly tie these together. That's a whole new governance problem that has to be solved once you start doing that, but I think the path that you've identified, which is making sure that there's interoperability amongst those systems, is probably first and foremost what we should be targeting, especially with the limited funding. I mean, you start wanting to tie 5 systems truly together, you're talking a lot of money and a lot of technology that really I don't think is there yet. There's a lot of overhead that still needs to be done, but I agree with the goals. I think that the PSIC office, and particularly the SCIP, should still address trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing with our resources. And that ties into things like the RPC and other things, making sure we're effectively using our resources wisely and not, you know, kind of haphazardly building out systems that aren't going to function together or work together in the future.
Anything else? I think some kind of integration like the RCSC allows that system ties to occur at a much, like Jesse said, less expensive approach. While we don't get a lot of bells and whistles in the process, we still do drive large-scale interoperability is, at least on the command and control side, as we have resources moving out of their local jurisdiction to others. I think that's still, I think, a good point of a goal for us to work towards.
And from the Phoenix urban area, and also with Tucson, we're working together. We're creating deployment models for these state assets, and I think this is going to tie into it. Like Scott's mentioning, as we move these resources to Yuma, what do we do with command and control once they're out of their home area? How do they communicate? How do they use those in other systems? And that's what the RCSC is helping us accomplish. So I wouldn't want to lose sight of this or put this too far off the radar.
Thanks, Justin.
And I'm not going to go through all of our initiatives here. Several in governance, one of the comments that we did have during the PSCC meeting was a sense that the need that governance did not advance as quickly as Commissioner Wills had hoped it would have. So obviously we are continuing to work in the governance realm and in particular looking at regional, local governance structures. As I kind of go through these, if there are initiatives or objectives that you'd like to kind of address, please shoot up, because I don't want to just read through all of these. And I think we're all familiar with the SCIP that we have. So these will continue to be a focus of ours. PICTs and CASM in particular are a focus right now. Last year we did big emphasis on getting the initial data load into CASM for NECP Goal 2. As the Public Safety Broadband Network RFP process starts to develop beginning later this year and next year for building out a Arizona broadband structure, CASM's going to become critical in identifying opportunities for sharing of assets and other items. And then continuing our work with partnership on the national level with various standards, and of course, narrowbanding compliance. Right now we're in focus of the VHF, UHF. Within a year or two, obviously the 800 megahertz rebanding will become an issue. Policy, standards, and procedures. We've done a tremendous amount of work in that area. If there are areas that you feel our office should be working on more, or that the committee or commission should be working on, this is absolutely the right area for us to be working on most. If you think any of these need to be reevaluated. Technology we kind of just talked about. AIRS we'll be talking about a little bit later today. The statewide microwave backbone continues to be the top priority when it comes to the technology initiatives that will enable interoperability long-term for the state. And unfortunately, as you can see under all three of the remaining objectives, they are all subject to funding availability, and Kevin and Scott and the rest of DPS are doing yeoman's work in trying to find that funding. So let me back up one. I should mention under Initiative 6 there, the National Interoperability Channels is something that this committee made great progress on over the last year in getting that Interoperable Channels plan revised and approved. So that's one there where we have met from a policy and procedure standpoint. We've met the milestones, and we continue to push that out and encourage that, particularly when folks are narrowbanding, reprogramming their radios for narrowbanding. The State Strategic Technology Reserve and state agency upgrades. The DPS has been working with all of the other state agency users over the last several months on their narrowbanding reprogramming efforts and coordinating with them, getting them on the same page. The RICO project in particular has brought together good partnership between DPS and ADOT and YRCS. I shouldn't say RICO project. That system connection there with YRCS has been doing fantastic there. From a training and exercise perspective, you've heard a lot over the last year related to communications unit training. Our AIRS training has been implemented and available online. We promote that when we're out there. The key focus, though, on both of these is that multi-year communications-focused training and exercise plans, and we're starting the implementation of those objectives, and that will be done through Susan and her coordination with ADIM and the county emergency managers. We also have a technical assistance award this year to help implement that initiative. And then lastly, our education and outreach plan. Whoops, forgot to change the header there. We're going to go over that outreach plan later today. These three initiatives, or three objectives there underneath the outreach plan, are the ones that we decided to focus on last year. And I'll save the discussion on these initiatives for Susan's presentation to get your thoughts on the outreach priorities for this year. Our timeline, as I mentioned, coming up May 22nd is the SCIP implementation workshop. We'll have the first draft, the public review, and comments out by June 4th following that workshop. We certainly, as mentioned above, we would appreciate anyone's comments between now and then as we work to update out-of-date information, correct errors, that type of thing. Any of your comments that you have on the overall direction of the state and our strategic initiatives, please send those to us so that we can share those during the SCIP workshop. And then a second draft will be submitted, or with comments due by June 21st to that first draft, and the second draft turned out June 28th for possible approval at the July 17th PSAC meeting in Flagstaff during the powwow. As I said, May 22nd, 9 to 4, the SCIP workshop. This will be down the street there at the Carnegie Center. It's where we've held the workshop, I believe, the last 2 years. It's a wonderful facility for this type of an exercise, and we encourage everyone to attend. I don't know yet whether we will be able to webcast the information or not. We're going to work on being able to do that, but every now and then we have technical difficulties with our network connections, and so we're going to have to test to make sure that that's going to be possible. But I do encourage folks to submit us your thoughts and comments and questions on the SCIP ahead of time so that those can be discussed during the workshop. And with that, are there any other questions or comments from the committee on the SCIP?
Thanks, Justin.